Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher. Today I'm going to give you a confidence boost. Alright, you ready? You prepped? Good. Okay, so one of the big things I always teach people is I get a lot of questions like, I want to get into tanking, I want to get into healing, I want to get into all these things, but I'm kind of worried. Am I ready? Do I have the right gear level? Do you think I'll be able to cope? And I always say, hey, just jump in. Just jump the hell in. And people go, well, okay, and they try it, and they're like, oh, it didn't go too bad, but I was worried about my threat. I didn't see, some people died in my dungeon. Is this mean I'm a bad healer? What the hell? And we kind of get drawn in and panicked about stuff we're not realizing because we're so focused on our own abilities and our spells. Am I using every cooldown? Have I got everything on top of everything? Have I got everything ready? This is kind of a difficult thing to manage. On top of that, I recently capped every single class, as most of you will be aware, in order to get ready for the brand new guides, 5.2 and so on and so forth. And now it's kind of an interesting time, because we're in the part of that expansion where we start to get very overgeared people who are kind of stuck in the suck, in the cesspool circle jerk of WoW, which is they do LFRs and they get quite reasonable gear compared to, say, the average freshly dinked character. And now they think they are the pawns or elite saws, whatever you want to call it. And they're the guys who start mouthing off. Also a bit of frustration thrown in there on their part due to the fact that they're kind of stuck in the game. They're not really progressing, but they're wearing shiny purples and they think they're the best and so on. You know the guys I'm talking about. And those are the guys we really fear. Those are the guys we don't want saying things to us. I don't want them to say I'm a slow tank. I don't want them to blame me as a healer. What do I need to do? Am I ready? Am I ready? So people say, hey, I have like 450 item level. Am I ready to do some normals and heroics? Should I get some more gear before I try and heal these things? What should I do? I don't think I'm quite ready to pull my weight in a dungeon without things going wrong. And then all these kind of guys start shouting at me and giving me abuse. So as I've just capped every class, what I decided to do is give you a nice confidence boost of how I did it. I had several other people whisper me saying, yo, you should buy this gear. You should head to the auction house and you should buy a lot of level 450 plus gear just to start doing normal heroics and start farming some gear, or even start doing some PvP before you jump into the gearing process. It's absolute garbage, guys. It's absolute garbage. It's a total waste of your money, total waste of your time. If you're looking to get some nice, quick, fast blues, you're going to be diving in head first. You're going to be diving in head first. So you're saying to me, well, I don't really want to tank a dungeon in my freshly dinked gear, especially when there's people in there with maybe a good set of LFR gear. Sometimes we find some people with some good normal gear and even some heroic gear. And especially if we're a healer, I don't know if I'm going to be able to cope with this. So what I did is I filmed every single first heroic I did on the classes that matter, okay? These are literally the very, very first heroics that I did on my characters. And I want to stress, is what's so important. You can believe me, or you can armor them, and you can do whatever the hell you want. These are just dinged characters. They are wearing exactly what they had while I was leveling. They have not been reforged, reglyphed. They haven't had any enchants, obviously. All that kind of stuff is missing. All the comfort zone is taken away, which isn't expensive stuff. Some of you who've leveled enchanting will know it's actually really cheap to throw some enchants on. Reforging is going to cost you, what, a couple of 100 gold at max? All this kind of stuff which will help you. I've removed all the comfort that you possibly get. And then I decided to show you how I got on. Some things I wanted to demonstrate here is, one, you don't have to worry about whether or not you can keep up with the pace, even with highly geared characters who are pushing you to the limit. We're going to keep a solid tank pace, we're going to keep good healing going, and we're also going to point out things like this, where you see this kind of tank stood in garbage, doesn't realize it, not a very good player, and then later on gives you a comment like this when he ultimately dies. Because regardless of how awesome you are, unless you super overgear things and can throw out constant 300k heals, people like this are going to get themselves killed. It isn't you killing them because you're a bad healer. That's not what happens. That's not what's going on here whatsoever. That's them getting themselves killed because they're not paying attention or they think they're super awesome. Whatever it might be, that's what's going on. And we sort of forget that while we're doing normal dungeons, while we're practicing a new spec, while we're worried about ourselves. We actually stop thinking about, well, maybe I'm not exactly surrounded by the best players in the world here. You know what I mean? These may not be the best players in the world. So, overdoing that fear, I've got some footage here for you guys of me tanking, speed tanking. No one ever complained about my pace. No one ever complained about my gear. I 100% guarantee that. Not one person ever doubted that I was fully capable of doing these dungeons, because I was, but of course in a world where gear and item level matter more to people who haven't got much of a clue, then there was nobody who was going, oh, your gear's too rubbish for this, you shouldn't be tanking. If it's a tank class, I'm wearing pure DPS gear. Pure DPS gear, trinkets, greens, and averaging around a 436 to 437 item level on every single character. The only classes I didn't show you were the Shaman. I would have leveled as Resto. I would have gone in as Resto. Obviously, that's the much faster queue time. That's what we're going for here. I might want to be Elemental. I might want to be Enhancement. But it was all about the queue time. I want fast queues. I want in and out. I want to grab my gear, and then I want to do one. I would go in as Resto, but of course I leveled as Enhancement, so I didn't have any intellect. I did sort of think to myself, could I heal a heroic? But I switched over to Resto in the enhancement gear, and that was not going to happen with 10k heals. That just wasn't happening whatsoever. I've also left out the priest, as I loved the priest. Simply put, I loved the priest, and therefore went on to get him sort of quite a lot of gear very, very quickly. But that's the way it goes. Every other class is completely freshly dinged. No tricks, no auction house, no reforging, no reglyphing, nothing like that. Just straight up getting in there, getting the job done, and absolutely nobody made a comment about gear, made a comment about pace. No one asked me or gave me abuse or anything like that. And you guys can do this too. You guys are fully capable of doing this. I hope this gives you the confidence not to go to the auction house and spend 2,000-3,000 gold buying a few items just to be able to think, oh, it's my safety net. Now I'm comfortable. I can't tank this dungeon without blur amount of gear because there'll be super high geared characters in there. This is purely randoms, as you guys would find, okay? I didn't do anything tricky involved. Armory the characters if you want the proof. I haven't added any more gear to them other than what dropped during these dungeons. That's it. Go ahead, guys. Don't worry about it. Don't go wasting your money. Don't go farming BGs if that's not what you're into. Don't go doing things you don't like to build yourself a safety net. You do not need it, okay? Here's the evidence. You can obviously go a little bit slower if it was your dungeon. That's entirely up to you, but there you go. Alright, guys. Enjoy a little bit of play.